I secretly recorded my wife cheating with another man. So I showed the proof for everyone and destroyed their careers. Dark times reveal angels. Those are the words of my wife, or about to be ex-wife, used as caption for a picture of her and her employee, Henry, on her WhatsApp story 3 weeks ago. The whole drama in my relationship played out for 6 months, but I'll try to keep it as concise as I possibly can. I, male 37, have been married to Judy, 32, for 2.5 years now. It's hard to pick out a single defining moment for everything that has happened so far, but I believe it all went downhill after that dang phone call. I was in the sitting room, watching highlights of football matches I had missed from the previous day when my wife's phone started to ring. Irritated by the sound of ringtone continuously cutting into the commentary of the game, I took her phone to her in the kitchen, telling her to deal with whoever was calling. Just then, the phone rang again, and she looked ready to pounce on the person on the other end of the line. Because we both worked in the cooperative world, Judy had this rule of never letting our office life interfere or cross into home time. She believed it was our social responsibility as humans to separate work from home. She led a private life and often encouraged me to do the same. She never answered work-related phone calls on weekends and preferred to get emails for situations that demanded her immediate attention. I turned to the kitchen's exit, half expecting her to go off at any second, but I never came. She fell silent and her countenance changed. However, it wasn't until dinner that she decided to let me in on what the phone call was about. "They are transferring me out of state," she said. "Transfer? Why? Where?" I asked. As soon as those words left my mouth, the realization of the situation hit me. "I told you about the company's expansion. Apparently, the board wants to transfer people to the new site to monitor the development of the branch," she explained. I knew how transfers worked, but more times than not, they transferred people without external commitment. She was a married woman. There was no way she would even be considered for a transfer if she didn't ask for it. I asked her if she applied to be transferred. She said no. Then, rejected? It came with a promotion. The promotion, she said. It became clear what the situation was. Judy was an ambitious woman. It was one of the many qualities I adored about her, and for the past year, she worked her butt off for the promotion they were offering her. She volunteered, worked extra hours, and even went out of her way to ensure her team of 7 functioned the way it was meant to without issue. It was finally about to pay off, although not in the way we expected. Her salary doubled with lots of perks and benefits, but I knew it was never about the money with her. She was more interested in working her way up the corporate ladder. "What do you think I should do?" she asked. At the back of my mind, all I could say was, F. It wasn't her fault, but she was putting me in the incredibly difficult situation. I had 2 distinct options. I could either tell her to reject the transfer, which would have cost her the promotion, or I could be supportive and give her my blessings to pursue something she had worked so hard for. In my head, I thought, people made long-distance marriages work all the time. I hadn't exactly seen any, but there had to be some instances, right? I was in a state of disillusionment, but not wanting to be responsible for holding her back. I faced her and said, "I'm going to support you whichever decision you take. We can make it work whichever way it goes." Boy, do I regret those words. Her eyes lit up with excitement, and in that moment, I thought I had made the right decision. It was going to work, I convinced myself. I had friends that traveled on business trips all the time, spending months away from their family and still sustained a spark in their marriage. Looking back now, she never really gave me much of an option to refuse. If I had offered my genuine opinion and asked her not to take the job, she would have awayed. But I knew Judy enough to tell it would come at a cost, and the endgame would be letting the marriage collapse on itself. I didn't want that. I also didn't like that she was going to be extremely far away from me. But if our marriage hung on the line, the lesser evil was letting go. It looked like the only logical decision, and faced with a similar situation again, I'm not sure how I would have chosen differently. She spent the rest of the evening thanking me for being understanding and whatnot, but all the while, I couldn't shake off the wave of irritation that coursed through me at the realization that my wife had goaded me into feeling more self-conscious so that my decision was in her favor. She had baited me, I was sure of it. However, it was hard to stay mad at her, seeing how excited she was. After all the arrangements for her travel had been finalized, We had a lengthy discussion about how we were going to make the marriage work. It goes without saying that we were going to call every day to ensure we were still involved in our daily lives. The issue of cheating never actually crossed my mind because I thought Judy is too goal-oriented to even want to consider it, because we got her company to agree to give her 5 days off every month. It'll work, she assured me, just before she boarded the plane. Little did I know that my marriage had ended in that instant. Every long-distance relationship always starts out the same way, calls around the clock. I even got her one of those Bluetooth earphones so we could talk while she worked, and for the first 2 months, it looked like it was working. We were on the phone more, and I knew more about her life than I did when I was living with her. Suddenly, it didn't feel like I had made the wrong decision putting her ambition over my needs. I felt like we were in a good place, and we were, at least until 2 months ago. Judy called one morning to cancel on her trip back to Michigan. Her company's quarterly performance had been below par, and she had to work on recruiting more capable professionals to fill out administrative roles to help make her job a lot easier. I didn't mind. I was on the verge of closing a huge deal that would have given me more flexibility to how I worked. The compensation for closing the deal was worth millions. With that, I could be closer to my wife. 5 days was inconsequential when I could be with her for as long as I wanted. I kept the deal away from her because I wanted to surprise her after it had been sealed. To make that happen, I needed to be at my best, which meant no distractions of any type. I didn't call her, and she didn't call me. It was the longest we had gone without talking on the phone. We still texted on WhatsApp, but we were both too busy to enter into any meaningful conversation. I'm explaining how everything happened because a few days ago, a mutual friend of ours called me callous and manipulating after she heard what happened, and if you ask me, I'm neither of those things. If anything, I consider myself a victim, which is why I'm here recounting everything as it went down between myself and Judy. Anyways, back to the story. The deal came through, and it was only a matter of hours before everything was finalized for good. It was one of those types of deals that people considered their big break. Only thing was, I had already had my big break with the first client I ever closed. This one was a game changer. I was going to be a part of the elite 10% of America. That night, while I waited for confirmation, I scrolled through my phone feeling very tempted to call her. It took every bit of self-control to stop myself from doing it. I wanted to tell her everything that had happened in the past week and how our lives were going to change. Judy's biggest dream was a trip to Paris. Instead of calling her, I made plans for our vacation there. The ticket, the hotel, food, places to visit. I had everything sorted out and was going to break the news together at once. I scrolled through my WhatsApp and landed on her story. She was hugging this guy, Henry. Tall, olive-skinned brown hair, blue eyes. He looked no younger than 35. He was the first person Judy employed when she started working. He was from the area. He knew about the job, and she needed his expertise. Underneath the picture, she captioned, "Dark Times reveals angels." I should have suspected something was wrong. I think I did because I held off from telling her that the deal came through when it did. Instead, I took the next available flight I could find to California to see her. As you may have already guessed, she was having an affair with Henry. I called her company in Michigan to inquire about the details of my wife's location as I was planning a surprise visit. Luckily, the receptionist that answered was a mutual friend of ours, so it didn't take much to convince her not to tell Judy I was coming. All through the flight, I kept playing out scenarios in my head of how I expected her to react once I told her about the deal. I went to her branch directly from the airport, hoping to take her to dinner to break the news to her. But I was informed she had not reported to work that day. So I had to Uber myself to the address I was given, all the while bothered about why the receptionist at the branch was surprised to find that Judy was married. However, I didn't press. I knew how Judy liked to keep her life as private as possible. After 4 flights of stairs, I arrived in front of her door with a bouquet of flowers behind my back. The minute I was about to knock on the door was when I heard my wife moan something along the line of, "Keep going." I felt sick to my stomach. All it took was 5.5 months away from me for her to cheat. Rage erupted within me, threatening to overwhelm every sense of reasoning in me. But I did my best to remain quiet. I left her apartment and drove back to her office to tell the receptionist that attended to me not to say anything about me visiting. I even tipped her with $100. I lodged in a hotel close to her apartment to keep a close watch on her. In the week that passed, I followed her around with a rental, and she was unsuspecting. She triangulated between work, yoga, and her apartment, making it easy to keep track of her movements. It was how I was able to tell that she spent a lot of time around Henry, and it wasn't exactly rocket science to deduct he was the one she was cheating with. I called and messaged her during this time, but she used work as an excuse and begged me to give her space to get her professional life in order. It was then that I decided I wasn't going to let myself be played by her anymore. I drew up divorce letters and waited for when she came in with Henry. It felt like all they did was have sex, because the second I arrived at her door, it was all I could hear: groans, grunts, and moans. Picking the lock, I walked in, tiptoeing to her bedroom with my phone on record. As disgusting as it was to watch, I took a full-minute clip of them having sex before announcing myself. In that moment, while she scrambled for clothes, I felt powerful. It was a sad and hurtful experience, but the pain in her face when I told her I was going to share the video with all of her coworkers and family members if she didn't sign the divorce papers made everything worth it. She begged for me to forgive her, saying she was going to resign and go to therapy, but I felt disgusted by her. I mean, who wouldn't? Every time I saw her, images of Henry pushing himself into her made me want to roll over and puke. She was asking for the impossible, and I wasn't going to entertain her. She told me she resigned from her work when she dropped a signed copy of the divorce papers yesterday, but it didn't stop me from sending the video to her parents. I want them to see the type of child they raised. All right, let's go to the new update. It's been 5 months since the divorce, and I thought to update you guys on the situation and things. To bring you up to speed, some months back, my wife got transferred to a different state to supervise her company's branch and got involved in an affair, one I found out during a surprise visit. After the divorce, I took some time to get my crap together, and for a while, I was distracted enough to forget about the whole situation. I took a week's vacation to the Dominican Republic. Great place, by the way. One evening, I got a notification from Reddit about the first post I made, at the point when I was writing it. I was more concerned with venting out the anger, irritation, disgust, and rage lingering within me. But surprisingly, it blew up. Scrolling through the comments, one post in particular caught my interest. It was made by a person that explained how he had been in a similar situation a few years back and felt miserable for weeks, especially because he didn't get to take his revenge to the length that was good enough to satisfy his spirit. It may have been a weird thing to say, no doubt unpopular as many people, judging by their comments, seemed satisfied with me just leaking a video of her infidelity to her parents and making her lose her job without even trying. I mean, it was somewhat satisfying to see that her relationship with her parents crumbled after that video, but other than that, it didn't look like I had achieved much. Last I heard, she was staying at a motel working at a night bar, ironically fitting for the cheating scum that she is. Some 3 weeks after I returned from my trip to the Dominican Republic, she arrived at my door, begging me to forgive her and take her back. Trust me, it was amusing to watch. She looked like all she did was cry in her spare time. Her eyes looked shot, swollen, and puffed. Either she got that look from crying, or she was dealing on some crap. Regardless of the case, it didn't matter to me. In fact, I realized that there wasn't much I could do to her. She was already an emotional wreck. I knew I had to divert my attention to the guy she cheated on me with, Henry. I allowed her into the house, and somehow, she must have thought I was reconsidering the whole idea with the divorce, because she immediately started with an explanation for her behavior and how she didn't really think I was actually going to go ahead with the divorce. She even went as far as saying that she lost her parents' respect and that I had punished her enough for her to regret what she did. I decided to ask her a question, a test I knew she would fail miserably, but I wanted to be sure. I couldn't have someone calling me callous and wicked because I acted without a justifiable motive. I turned to her, looked her dead in the eye, and asked her, "How many times did it happen?" You'd think she would have learned from the whole experience and buy back some dignity by saying the truth. "One," she answered, swearing that she was telling the truth. According to her plea, it became difficult to cope with the burden of having to run a business that was apparently failing with expenditures exceeding revenue by 3 to 1. She claimed that she didn't want to burden me with her problems, as she felt she already asked for too much by leaving to pursue her ambition in the first place. I couldn't be bothered by her excuse. I was dumbfounded by how easy it was for her to look me in the eye and lie to me without breaking a sweat. It was hard to imagine that our entire relationship had any iota of truth about it after that. My dad always believed that it was nearly impossible to look a person in the eye and lie to them. He couldn't have been more wrong. In truth, I didn't know how many times they had got together, but I had an idea on when it must have started, and it sure as hell didn't happen once. I might have been skeptical and hesitant to dismiss her lies if I didn't follow her around for the first 2 weeks, or so that I arrived in Michigan. Plus, the very day I arrived, she was in her room moaning loud enough for all her neighbors to hear, and her obsession with keeping a private life didn't matter much then. Regardless, I kept my cool and said nothing to make her think I knew otherwise. What about him? Henry? Hell if I know. He's probably still in Michigan with his wife. Imagine my surprise when I discovered that Henry was a married man. As infuriating as it was, I had to remain cool. I knew I had a chance at extending my revenge to not only hurt her, but also Henry. Absolutely no way in hell was he going to walk out of this situation without facing the consequences of his actions. I didn't need a mirror to tell that my acting skills weren't exactly Oscar-worthy, but judging by how eager she was to tell me everything, including lies about how Henry managed to manipulate her, I was certain she was unsuspecting that I was baiting her. I told her to give me the time to think as I ushered her out of my house. And immediately after she left, I sent the video to everyone that knew her, including her receptionist friend at the office. The very first thing I did was book a ticket to Michigan to break Henry's life apart, using the information Judy gave me about his marriage. But I wasn't going to do it the conventional way. No, I planned to hit him right where it hurts. I rented a studio apartment close to where Henry lived. Watching him from the distance, waiting for the videos of his sexcapade with my ex-wife dropped around the office while I observed his wife. The woman was absolutely gorgeous. Flowing blonde hair, stormy gray eyes, and a smile to kill for. Although my plan was to bait her into sleeping with me so that I could gloat to her husband while I premiered his sex tape to his family, I found myself having a change of heart. But I know what you're thinking. But aside from the money, I'm a pretty decent-looking guy. Decent enough to be prom king anyways. Amy was a kind and genuinely caring person. But I thought I was especially startled by her honesty. We moved from greeting by the roadside to having coffee over an accidental bump I orchestrated. Over coffee, I learned a lot about her that, for some days, I forgot about why I was even in Michigan in the first place. It was like one of those friendships that were just easy to keep and maintain. I even started seeing less of Henry for a while, and thought the plan didn't go the way I wanted. But apparently, he had been sacked and spent all his time scouring the city for a new job, trying not to raise suspicion from Amy. During one of our many discussions, one of which was how I learned that Henry was an immigrant that got to the United States on a student visa, Amy also told me about how she had been having marital issues for a while. She told me how her husband barely touched her anymore and barely paid her any mind until about 2 months ago when things suddenly changed for them. What she didn't know was that she had just provided me with enough information to completely destroy Henry. From her story, they had not been married up to 3 years, which meant Henry wasn't a citizen even if he already applied for the green card. I needed Amy to turn on her husband, and for that, I told her the truth about everything. At first, she was mad at me for lying to her, but she soon got over it. I showed her the video and told her how it haunted my dreams knowing that they were both going about their miserable lives, not justifiably affected by their actions. Luckily, it didn't take much to convince Amy. In the next hour, we planned how she was going to go over confronting Henry. I wasn't there to witness the drama, but I made sure he knew I was behind everything bad that was happening to him. Last I heard, he was getting deported to wherever hole he crawled out of. Honestly, now I can say I feel satisfied. Thanks to that comment, I was able to express the full extent of my wrath, and I found Amy in the process. I guess all is well that ends well.